Welcome once again, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, to Mysteries from Beyond the Other Dominion. I'm your host, Dr. Franklin Ruehl. Now, the occult connections of the Nazis. Roll tape!
To discuss the occult connections of the Nazis. Now, previously I mentioned to you that they engaged in pendulum dowsing. They had pendulum dowsers at their Naval Institute trying to locate the position of Allied convoys in the North Atlantic. But that was just one aspect of their occult connections. For example, I think all of you are familiar with the swastika. But the swastika was actually an emblem, a symbol of good luck for the Hindus and Buddhists over the centuries. For example, you will see statues of Buddha with a swastika on his chest. The Indians, the American Indians, believed it was also a symbol of good luck. And the Nordics had the symbol of the swastika, meaning the rising sun, again, indicating good fortune. And during the Middle Ages, Teutonic knights wore on their chests, on their tunics, swastikas, again, for good luck. It had nothing to do with the Nazis. It's just that the Nazis believed it also foretold their success. Of course, they transformed it into the twisted cross, but it was an emblem that was used over the centuries, long before Adolf Hitler came to power. Now we have the runes. These were mystical symbols used by Nordic fortune tellers and mystics over the centuries. The Nazis believed the runes gave them power. Each Nazi organization had its own separate rune symbol. For example, we see here the double sig rune, which was used by the SS. The Hitler Youth had the single sig, and Nazi officers took training lessons on the meaning of these various runes because they believed they had magical powers. There is also the so-called ceremony of the blood flag. Back in 1923 in Munich, Hitler tried to seize control of the government in the so-called Munich Putsch. He failed, and 16 of his followers were murdered. Well, there's a flag that day that was covered in their blood. That flag was recovered, and any time a new flag or Nazi banner was created, it was consecrated by being rubbed against the special flag. It was called the ceremony of the blood flag. Again, they believed it imbued that flag or banner with magical powers. As far as astrology goes, we've all heard about Hitler making decisions based on astrology, and he wasn't the only one. Both Rudolf Hess and Heinrich Himmler, his top lieutenants, were thoroughly steeped in the occult. Rudolf Hess flew to Scotland on May 10, 1941, and that seemed to be a capricious act. But his astrologer told him that that date was a date of global change. And if indeed he had been able to successfully meet with partisans, Nazi partisans, that were close to the government in England, he might have been able to establish a peace treaty between Germany and Britain. And if that had occurred, the United States may never have gotten into the European theater of the war, and the entire history of the world might have been changed. As far as Atlantis, Heinrich Himmler, Hitler, and Hess believed that the Nazis were actually descendants from the survivors of the lost continent of Atlantis. Indeed, they thought that the survivors had made their way somehow to Nepal, crossed into Northern Europe, and founded the Nordic or Aryan race. Indeed, they sent many expeditions to Nepal and Tibet, examining the natives there, trying to find individuals who might have Nordic characteristics, such as blonde hair and blue eyes, and they took blood and tissue samples. They were unsuccessful. They then hunted for perhaps an Atlantean civilization that might be surviving underground, such as an expedition that was conducted in 1942 to the German island of Rügen. Again, they were unsuccessful, but they hoped to make an alliance with these Atlanteans. They also believed in the power of the sword of Longinus. Specifically, Hitler had seen it as a boy. This was the sword or spear, I should say, that the blind Roman centaur, Longinus, had stuck into Christ during the crucifixion. And that spear was on display at the Hofburg Museum in Vienna. When he annexed Vienna, Austria, he immediately secured that sword, that spear. He thought it was the spear of destiny that would secure his place in history. Himmler, on the other hand, was more interested in the Holy Grail. That was the cup or chalice that caught the blood of Christ after Longinus had stuck him with a spear. And he had sent many expeditions out trying to find it, such as to southern France. Again, he was unsuccessful. Himmler also believed in reincarnation. He thought he was the reincarnation of the king Heinrich of the Middle Ages, who had driven the Slavs from Germany. And at his his castle in Beetelsburg, Germany, he had created a round table in the image of King Arthur's round table, where he gathered his top officers. And he even treated all of his top officers like Teutonic knights. Each received their own castle in a conquered land. Now, obviously, despite all of these occult connections, the Nazis lost the war. So apparently their beliefs did not help them.
Now, until next time, may the power of the cosmos be with you. Yes, yes, yes.